Kareem Ray, your host at the One Soccer Nation podcast, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Andy Salandy. Andy is the founder and CEO at TiDi Nation. Andy, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great, Kareem. Thank you for having me on. I've been looking forward to chatting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time. I'm a little bit under the weather here, so bear with me, but I really appreciate you taking the time again. So, for the viewers, what is TiDi Nation? We could see that you got the logo crest on your chest right there, and then you got TiDi Nation in the background.
Yeah, thanks for starting there. TiDi Nation is a company slash movement. The TIDI stands for Think It, Do It. And so it's an apparel brand, which is trademark. We have our own apparel. We have our own sports brand. It's not just apparel. We have sports equipment. We have boots. We have balls. We have everything soccer, basketball, and sports related in the brand. But the movement part of Tie-Dye Nation is really, if you look at the words think it and do it, think it on a spiritual level is hope and do it is faith. So Tie-Dye Nation is a company that is sort of anyone that enters a nation, we encourage you to step into your purpose, live by faith, go after the things that you think you can accomplish, dream big. And yeah, that's the movement. We're building a nation of people who believe in living into that purpose through living by faith, having hope, living by faith. Tie-Dye Nation.
Amazing. In regards to merchandise, how involved are you guys in the process of creating merch? Do you guys have just a supplier and you guys provide the design, or how involved are you guys in that aspect? And the reason I ask is because I recently had Diaza Football, which they do everything in regards to merchandise, customization, printing, stitching, all that stuff. So how involved are they're involved from 0 to 10. How involved are you guys?
Yeah, same. We are a brand. Think of Nike, think of Adidas, think of any of the biggest brand. Tie-dye apparel is a very similar brand. Obviously, in this game of apparel and brands, there's so many different levels. And the top tier, most people know the top two is Adidas and Nike. But there was a point when Nike was nobody, and it was Adidas, it was Converse, and it was Puma. So TiDi is a brand, and we have our own manufacturing globally in different countries. And again, we have our own graphics team, we have our own design team. What we pride ourselves in, Kareem, is that you think it, we can do it. Meaning we can create and customize anything. This style that I have on, no one else have it in football, or in soccer. So yeah, we've created everything from scratch. It's not a copy and paste, and it's not a print on demand from a Shopify. It's a real apparel brand with real manufacturing and the vision of continuing to expand and grow the brand like we're doing systematically globally.
Got it. So one of my favorite questions going back here now is, to soccer is, how did you get involved in the beautiful game?
Yeah, well, again, growing up in the island of Trinidad and Tobago, I think you're born into the beautiful game. It's not how do you get involved, it's when do you get involved and at what level. So I was born in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't want to age myself, but when I grew up in the game, my dad is very iconic in the game in terms of having a local league that pretty much everyone on the island played in. So, as far as I can remember, the game in Trinidad is such a big game in terms of play, and that we played in the streets, we played in the church, we played in the schoolyard, we played everywhere. And that's when sort of unstructured. And then the league that I just mentioned, the Etihad League, my dad's league, is when you play under 14, under 16, under 18, and the senior men. So that's what we used to call big football, 11 on 11. But all along, we played and developed in the streets, something we call small goal. And small goal was played everywhere in Trinidad. So growing up, I don't even know what age I started, but all I know I was always involved in playing. And I remember going to my high school and showing up. The school started at 8:05. It was in the capital. I used to get to school at like 6:37. We played for the entire hour before school started. That was the that was the thing with me, just playing all the time, really.
Nice, back in the nice sun in the islands. What age
Yes.
did you move from Trinidad to the U.S. and how did that come about?
Yeah, so after playing in Trinidad, one of the things I think if you talk to anyone, and the biggest thing on the island is something called intercolor. Because in Trinidad, it's funny, they call the high schools colleges. So I went to two different high schools, first Queens Royal College, and then the second high school called St. Augustine Comprehensive, but they had the tag name the Green Machine. And the Green Machine is really a powerhouse in football and soccer in my time. And we won some national titles. I had a better career on a senior level because Intercolor is like under 19s. And when I was finished with high school in Trinidad, a club coach, Mr. Michael Grayson, I have to give him a shout out, approached me because Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina was offering some scholarships, and he had already sent one player from his high school, my roommate at the time, Carlos Lee, and then I was blessed to be given this other opportunity to be the next player they were recruiting. That's how I got here on a soccer scholarship back in '87, way before your time, Kareem.
Definitely way before my time. That's 13 years. Um, with saying that, so then you got over to the U.S. and then where did soccer lead you from there?
Yeah, well, again, I had a great career. I don't want to jump past my Appalachian State soccer career because I came in, obviously, when you're underclassman as a freshman, you have to pay the price to kind of be a leader. But early on, I was given a great leadership role from my freshman year. And then my sophomore year, I was actually the captain of the varsity team, which is unheard of really for underclassmen to captain the team. But you usually have two or three captains in college. So I was one of three captains from my sophomore year, my junior year, my senior year. We won the Southern Conference tournament my senior year. Historically, I don't think App State has ever won prior or after that year, 1990, my senior year. I was blessed to become the tournament MVP as well. And, it was a very monumental year for me because that was my last year in college, senior year. And yeah, it led me to having a beautiful career at App State, 87 to 90. Folks can look it up. We had some very successful years, 4 years in App State, either finishing in the top three or winning it. And then, yeah, I was a pre-med undergrad. So soccer was always part of everything. College was great. And then from there, I sort of moved on and did my master's degree. And I did have a small stint for 2 years as a pro, the early days of pro soccer in America.
What obviously in that time when you played soccer, and the professional realm in that time was completely different to where professional soccer is now. How much of a progression has soccer made in the U.S.?
A lot. I think the US soccer is very misunderstood and people don't understand the kind of talent just because the system itself is a pay to play, right? But if you look at the US market, I think everyone from around the world is in the US. So call a soccer nation that Brazil and Argentina or France, call any nation, there are people from that nation who was born here, who came here as migrants, and they're all here. So the talent base in the US is much more significant that people talk about because people are looking at who is representing the national team and the level and so forth. I'll be honest with you, when I played back in '87 to '90, the college teams that I played against that was ranked in the top 10. I remember playing University of South Carolina my freshman year. They were number one in the nation. And they had basically an international squad from all over Europe. So the level was always, in my opinion, pretty high. And it's gotten higher because again, now as a country, it seems like soccer is now being truly embraced and not suppressed. I felt like soccer was always put on the back burner to basketball, baseball, and American football. We can debate that, and soccer was always kept. But now I don't think soccer can be stopped. Hence the fact that the U.S., Canada, and Mexico are hosting the next World Cup. It's back. And if you look before I came to the U.S., they had a league with Pele and Beckham and some of the greatest in the world playing for the New York Cosmos, and they were having 75,000 fans in the stadium, Kareem. So it's one of those things where the notion that it wasn't a soccer nation and nobody cared, it's not really true. And how far has it progressed? I think very far, but we're still being barred by the pay to play and the real accumulation of the talent that's out there to get an opportunity. That's what we face with in US soccer.
Yeah, you're right on the dot with that one. I think the other thing too, I was recently speaking to someone about promotion relegation. That'd be another big step in soccer in the US if that's implemented. But that conversation is how do they implement it with the leagues being closed systems, and then the point where you mentioned about you know U.S. being a soccer nation and having all these different countries in one country in the U.S. It's so true. A lot of the guys that I've interviewed that play in the MLS, USL Championship, USL One, that the guys that come from Spain, France, England, these are guys that were trying to go pro in their country and they didn't get the opportunity, so they wanted to do school, they wanted to go to college, which some of these guys they can't do that in their country, and they come over to the US and they're top players compared to the Americans, and they take their spots, they take the American spots in these clubs because of how good they are, where they're coming from. They eat, breathe, sleep soccer, right? So yeah, it's actually really interesting, and I think what I said again, you're right on the dot with that one. With all these different events coming to America, Copa America in June, you mentioned it, 2026 World Cup, and then maybe a women's FIFA World Cup. What do you think this is going to do to soccer in the U.S.?
Well, it's already doing it. The business. Let's unpack what you're asking, Kareem. Soccer is a business, and so the purists always talk about promotion relegation. But the business model for the MLS owners and even the USL owners is, hey, it's working for them. Because in that so-called purist of the promotion delegation, how many clubs in those nations that have the pure version of or the way it should really be as we think as purists, how many of those clubs are in the red financially? So the business people aren't listening to the purists about what's the best model for the players and the players' development. They're looking strictly, I think, as a business. And I think soccer as a business has arrived. I mean, we have the iconic Lionel Messi here. So soccer as a business is very real and it's continuing to rise. And I think once the powers that be, Kareem, continue to understand how to monetize soccer, it will continue to grow with World Cup and beyond, because it's already you're seeing the rise, you're seeing the expansion of the MLS franchises and the stadiums being filled out. When it started with MLS, it was like you'll do American football and soccer. Now you have soccer specific stadiums continuing to be developed. So I don't think it's going back. I think it's going to continue to be. And from an economic standpoint, you talked about it. Europeans coming here because they couldn't make it. Well, it's not that it wasn't good enough, it's the limited opportunities because of the size of the European market and now the size of the US market. So the opportunities here in North America, look at Canada. I think you're from Canada. There's 8 or 9 CPL teams. Okay, let's fast forward. How many is it going to get to? So the growth is happening in North America now, and the opportunities are here as a result.
Yeah, 100%. I just recently did an interview, and I have the exact number. So CPL is 8, and then in the US, it's around 119 pro clubs in MLS, USL Championship, USL One, NISA. So yeah, you are right. And then the playing jobs, it's in the thousands, but I think it's between 1 to 3,000. But don't quote me on that number though. But yeah, again, to your point, the opportunities in the US, even myself, I left Canada. We didn't have a professional league until 2019. So when I was 16, 17, 18, I was looking outside of my backyard outside of Canada saying, hey, if I want to go pro, I got to go outside the country. And I went to England, France, the US. The US was the last spot I was at, right? And I was always held back by passport because you need a visa, right? You need a work visa to get paid legally.
Yeah,
So no, 100%, you're right. We know that education is a big piece to it. Players economically all around the world come to the US for school, college. Besides pro's the bonus for these guys. They get it. Um, you know the business better than I do. College, university. Obviously, there's great benefits to getting an education, but how do you see that business? Um, you know, ha- obviously it's very lucrative. It's been working. It's getting players in and out the door. What are your thoughts on the college and university system in the U.S. soccer landscape?
yeah. It's a good question. I think Kareem. If I'm being honest, I've always been one to look at when I was a little boy. All I wanted to do is be a pro soccer player. I did not plan to go to college and get a degree in biology. My undergrad is pre-med biology with a minor in chemistry, and then I have a master's in biology. That was not my plan, but I was always educated on, hey, the foundation that you need from an education standpoint is important. And in some ways, I'm very glad I listened to that because it does give you an advantage to navigate life with or without soccer. So I think the university system is a bonus. I look at this life and I say, look, soccer is a business, yes, and it's a market that is very, very difficult compared to other sports because how come in the US guys can go to college, then leave and go pro and be NBA players? Guys can go to college, leave and go pro and be NFL players. You can go to college and leave and go pro and become whatever, but in soccer they try to tell you once you go college and you try to go pro, you're going to be too old. Now MLS is drafting guys out of college, but in the global market, it's almost like going to college, they give you a black eye for doing that. I say, because now the US has opened up this thing called NIL, name, image, and likeness, more than ever, you should go to college and then decide because it opens up more opportunity for you to be successful. A degree, you could end up with endorsement. I just saw a study where this young lady at Iowa State, Caitlin Clark, she's not even in the NBA or WNBA yet, and she's making more money than 10 NBA players. This is what's getting ready to happen. So for me, it's a win-win because now you have the degree, you can go ahead and get endorsements. And many times people are chasing pro for different reasons, but it's monetarily driven. So if you can get it through going to college and getting a degree, Kareem, it's a new day. I think for me, the percentage to make it to pro because it's so competitive is so small. Don't limit yourself if you're good academically. And even if you have another interest that you know you'd like to pursue life after soccer, college is always the best path and then look to go pro. I disagree with this notion that you're too old, but it's the business world of soccer, right? So for me, college worked out because I was able to form and develop a career out of what I went to college to do, even though that wasn't my intent. Looking back at it, it is a good insurance policy to understand that you can still go after pro, and if there's a definite path, go. Don't get me wrong, go and finish college online or whatever. But if there's no path, don't abandon college to go with no process or no path ahead because it's a very competitive market to get to the pro level. And when you're dealing with like even in the US, you talk about no promotion relegation, and it's deeper than that. There's like I would call them closed systems because everybody has the academy, and if you're in their system, you can matriculate into the pro. If you're not, it's kind of hard to break in. So what do you do if you're an outsider? Then college is a great option to make sure you have a future.
Yeah, 100%. And I think NIL is the perfect time now because of social media. If the young men and women are doing it right, they can market themselves on so many different social media platforms, reach millions of people, and make money off of that and survive it. Who doesn't want to make a buck when they're in college or university, right? Um, it is pretty expensive to go to college and university. So That's amazing. You've also been, I'm not too sure actually, but I know Kendall, your partner, Kendall Reese, um, he's a part of United, if I'm saying this correctly. Uh, what is it called? The United Soccer Black Coaches. Am I saying?
United Soccer Coaches is the hierarchical association, and then the Black Soccer Coaches Association within the United Soccer Coaches. Yeah, he's a past president of that and one of the top leaders in that organization. Yeah.
Did you participate in that in any way?
Only from acquiring my coaching license, and ironically enough, my same partner is part of TiDi Nation and a business partner and a managing partner in our entity was the one that I did my national coaching license under Kendall Reyes and his partner Sam Mapudo. I did my national coaching license under Kendall as an instructor. I always talk about Kendall as an instructor. I think he's an amazing coach and educator. I think that's one of his gifts. He does a great job of articulating the knowledge of the game. But no, I didn't participate in terms of being a part of that organization. You know, when you're doing anything, Kareem, like me, especially coming out of an academic background, you want to credential your knowledge, right? So even though I played and I was coaching, obviously I didn't have any formal organizational coaching education. So I decided I'm going to go do my license, and that's the amount of involvement I had in that association. But I do not. I want to put. I don't know. You've had multiple guests. I've looked at your podcast. I can come over somewhat controversial in that I don't believe coaching is just, even though in coaching education they have the practical aspect of you acquiring the license, I don't think it's balanced well. I think it's too theoretical. Coaching is not a theoretical thing. I think there's too much emphasis on theoretical knowledge for coaching that it's not going to work. Coaching is a very fluid, dynamic thing, and to me, coaching, if you're going to really do coaching education, then a big part of that should be communication and psychology. Because that's what's needed to really reach your players many times and make sure they're on the same page with the mission to work as a unit. And I think that gets lost in translation with coaching education because it's sort of borderline X's and O's. And coaching for me, um, I was already successfully coaching and developing players and winning before getting my license. So I wasn't going to abandon what was working just because I went into an organization that was structuring to give me this license to coach. I just think some of the greatest coaches in the world have zero license and didn't need it because of the things I'm saying, the ability to communicate properly, their ability to reach and motivate players. You know, the best coaches are coaches that players will die for. They will run through a wall for. They'll do whatever for. Why would they do that? Because of that relationship that the coach have had invested in them as individuals, showing that he cares about them, treating them fairly. All those different things play into coaching. It's not just the credentials and the license and the knowledge of the game that you can get from that. So again, long answer, but I was only involved in getting my license from that organization because I'm kind of one of those guys that believe in building your own ecosystem. Hence what we're doing with TiDi Nation.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And as we mentioned about this podcast as well. It's going to be organic. I think it just goes back to that, just building an organic relationship. That's something you can't read from a book or teach. You got to
That's
see it.
right.
You got to see it. You got to feel it. So I appreciate that, and I do a lot of things based off of that.
And Kareem, before you continue, I want to flip it on you. You've been so humble bringing all these guests and talking to them about who they are, what they've done, and what their organization is doing. You started off by kudos to you giving me a platform for me to describe what TiDi Nation is all about. But young man, you have something powerful that you're building called One Soccer Nation. Do you ever talk about that in your podcast? And do you mind sharing that since we're organically talking to each other here? So your viewers can understand your vision, because this is how we met through Kendall. I think One Soccer Nation and TiDi Nation are so similar in their vision and their thinking about the opportunities to afford players through building an entity, through building an ecosystem. And I mean, with your age and your vision, I'm just very impressed with a young man like you putting something like that together and going after it and staying so focused on that mission with One Soccer Nation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andy. Um, you know, usually I keep the podcast on the guest, but I mean, you know what? This would be perfect for me to be on the TiDi Nation podcast. I could fully answer that, but just to give you the short answer, you know, the idea of One Soccer Nation, the brand itself was created by me, but the idea behind it to go out and do what we're doing is really planted by Jay Waterman. So shout out to Jay, who is also the co-founder of One Soccer Nation. So our goal is to give unknown superstars a chance to go pro. I've spoke on several podcasts and shared the vision, and I look forward to sharing the long version on the TiDi Nation podcast. But just to answer it in a short answer is that it's I'm obsessed. I love it. Very passionate. I wake up thinking about it. I dream about it. It's on the. It's I see it every day. It's on my phone. So I'm the same way like you. And being young, I don't really look at it like that. But it's just um, I've been just building focus since 18. So and you know again, a lot of inspiration comes from Jay. A lot of seeds, and I just I've been really watering it, cultivating it, and growing it. So that's the short version, and I look forward to sharing the long.
Well, coming from a mentor of yours, Jay Waterman, and watering it, I guess it's fitting, huh?
Exactly, and the water just like in the background on the earth. So
Right, great. Thanks for saying that. No, again, I appreciate you at least giving because I see so much synergy and parallel in what you do in One Soccer Nation and TiDi Nation and what we build in here. And going back to the question about the coaching education and so forth, TiDi Nation is doing a lot. If I can continue along a little bit of what we're doing, I just got off an earlier call and my partners in Haiti, Salandy, give us a shout out. So I want to give a shout out to FC Tour in Haiti, who I believe is one of the best young football academies in the Caribbean, a model that I believe I told them I think we should model what they're doing for everything within the academy level of TiDi Nation, because I'm always looking for best in class and best practice. And what they're doing is so holistic in the development of the players in Haiti. You know, football is life, right? Kareem, you're obsessed with it because this thing mirrors life. And I'll go back and forth between football and soccer because we know globally that's what the game is called. That's what the game is. It is football. We've Americanized it, and America is so powerful. They have a say in soccer, but it's life. And so, to me, when you're building this nation, TiDi Nation, One Soccer Nation, FC Toro, it's all about the holistic development of the boys and girls so that they can live into their purpose. So many, my knowledge thing is my goal is to eventually interview a lot of people. We have our podcast called TiDi Talks, but the interview is to what impact did this game have on your life? Because there's so many doctors, lawyers, you name it, who they wanted to be pro soccer players. If you dig deep, it touched so many different people in so many ways, right? And so that's what makes this game so unique and so powerful that almost everyone globally can relate to this game. They still watch it. World Cup is still probably the biggest show on earth, right? I mean, when it comes around, it's just and it's a religion in Europe and all over the world, really, because I mean the fans are so passionate, they're so involved, they're so emotionally invested. I don't think we can say what we want, but I don't think anything compares to this game.
there's no sport that can. This is global. Um, and it's amazing just the positive impacts it has on the world. It's truly amazing in it, and it just feels so good playing it, and it keeps us healthy.
Yes.
Um, I want to touch off on something else as well. The UPSL, you were a part of that. You know, share how you got involved in the UPSL and what you've done there.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to give shout out to sister in Fayetteville, North Carolina, by the name of Coco Santizo. Coco is a young lady who is involved in grassroots soccer in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And she called me up a day. She always called me big brother and said, "Look, there's a league that I believe you can really be instrumental in helping grow." And I said, "What is that?" She goes, "The UPSL." I had never heard of the UPSL. And at that point, she was already talking to the commissioner, Jan Scara, about coming to the East Coast. So Coco is the one who convinced Jan that she has someone in the East Coast that could help them spearhead the expansion in the East Coast. Connected me with Jan. We had a conversation. The conversation resonated with my spirit. Why? Because it was about creating a platform to give a lot of kids. Remember, we have a pay-to-play system in the US for soccer. So that pay-to-play system leaves out a lot of kids who cannot afford to play. So had I been growing up the way I grew up in Trinidad in a single mom household, I would have been left out in the US then, because she would not be able to afford for me to play in the big clubs and pay the money. So when I heard that we're going to build a platform that is a pro development platform to help players who can't afford, who maybe falling through the cracks between not even being able to go to college because they didn't get a scholarship, they weren't recruited, they don't have money, and they can't make the jump to go pro. I was all in. And that's how we got started. Through Coco connected me with Jan, and Jan selling me on the vision of what we're gonna do together to make this league a platform for player development and player exposure. And that's how I get involved. And by the way, just to make it clear, on the record, there's only one state, California, that the UPSL was in when I got started. And now you can look at where it's at. And those who know, Jan himself, who if he ever sees this, and anybody else who's bought the league and sees this, knows how it got expanded in the East Coast and beyond, and my involvement with the help from some partners, but my involvement, blood, sweat, and tears, building this thing with intellectual property as well to get it to where it's at. So that was my involvement.
Understood. So from UPSO just being in California, starting off there, what year was that? And then how long were you apart with the UPSO? How many years?
So again, I sort of block out things when it don't align with what we started off saying it was gonna be. But I would say if you look at the UPSL, I would now, just thinking back, have to say maybe it's close to 7 years old now in terms of the national expansion. And right after it started in California, the next year there was nobody in the East Coast. I started up here, so I'd say 6 years ago. And how long did I stay? 3 years, 2.5, 3 years building it before it was sold to another entity. And that's when I left the league because, again, different direction, different leadership, not what we started off talking that we were going to do together. So I stayed as the East Coast operations manager for about 3 years, building out, helping develop it on the East Coast. And the rest is history. It's gone pretty viral, obviously, with more and more people coming in the different markets and so forth.
Understood. Yeah, I want to dive in a bit deeper here in regards to what the expansion looks like. What were the things that you dealt with? How did you help with the expansion in regards to the league?
Well, again, I did it all. I was an operations manager with no real, it's a nice title, but at the end of the day, when you cover in Maryland to Florida, it's a lot of states. So what did I do? First, I created the presence. For example, I'm in North Carolina, so there was a lot of focus more on where I live and connecting Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So that conference, the Mid-Atlantic, was 3 states, because I also had a team called FC Cardinals, and that was part of why I wanted to be a part of it, because I did have these young Hispanic players that were not going to go college bound that I think had the ability to go pro. And what do? We need a senior team outside of my youth soccer club. So it was a vested interest in being an operations manager and helping develop that league for the players, even my own club, to develop. So, I did a lot of work in terms of connecting, because look, when you don't have anything and you start approaching teams to build anything, the first thing they're going to say is, who am I going to play against? And so when you have nothing, it's a very hard sell because you have more doubts and barriers to the expansion, and people don't have the vision. So initially, when I connect to this Mid Atlantic conference, we had teams all the way in Germantown, Maryland, playing Savannah Clovers, who's now in the NISA. They started in the UPSL, right? Maryland Bobcats, who's now in NISA, they started in the UPSL. They all started in my conference. In Florida, a young man came in. He was, he was under me as a conference manager for just the Miami conference. Then, I was told, hey, do you mind giving him the entire state because he's in Florida? And I said, fine. I have multiple states I'm handling. And so to answer your question without getting too detailed, because it's a very, for me, it's a tough subject because I was all in to build something that was going to help players get to where they got to go. And once things don't align with what I believe it should be for my movement, my mission, my purpose, I don't participate long term. And I'm no longer in that league because that league is not what we started off it to be. And I'll leave it at that. You know what I mean? The UPSL is doing what they're doing. I'm in a different path with TiDi Nation, sort of building global markets and more passionate about, the Caribbean market that needs to be developed and have leagues to connect the islands and the African market and different global markets, Kareem, that is sort of people that need the knowledge base that we have. And that's kind of not my new narrative and my new impetus and my new mission in terms of what I'm focused on.
Understood. So we land back at the Tie-Dye Nation. This is what's going on in real time. So I asked you what it is, but where do you want what do you want Tie-Dye Nation to be in the next 2 years? The World Cup is in 2026. How do you plan on capitalizing on that soccer opportunity, and where do you want to expand to tie-dye?
Yeah, it's a great question. So going back to, if you look at TiDi Nation, we have a vision, we have a mission statement. And without having to quote them verbatim, the goal with TiDi Nation is to truly build an ecosystem that's all inclusive. It is all inclusive in giving you resources and access. See, in life, all you need is an access. You need an opportunity to make it. I got access to Michael Grayson, and it changed my entire life. So I know the power of just getting an opportunity and then you run it with that. So TiDi Nation is building this resource-based ecosystem in multiple markets. We're not just in North America, right? We have a Caribbean arm called TiDi Caribbean that is handling, I will see you and other partners in the Caribbean, handling the expansion in the Caribbean. That's why FC Toro is part of the family. There's others in Trinidad, Tobago. Our whole goal is when you look up the entire Caribbean, we'll have a TiDi Nation present. And it's the same thing we're doing in Africa. I can call countries that we're touching right now, as in Gambia, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, Somaliland, Ethiopia. So TiDi Nation is organically growing, Kareem. Some of it is not even scripted in terms of what market is evolving. It's just based on how God works. For me, we just building this thing organically, naturally, spiritually, and we put in resources there to offer opportunity to boys and girls wherever they are once they enter the nation.
Got it. When I think about Africa and the islands, well, I think Africa being harder than the islands, but I wouldn't know. So I'm just curious here. How do you build in these countries? Because I don't know the infrastructure. When I think about Canada, the US, I know the infrastructure is there. So for example, let's just talk about roads. So I know driving in Toronto or Canada, it's a smooth, I know the roads are smooth. There's not going to be a lot of bumps. There's going to be lights. People are going to drive as safe as possible, blah, blah, blah. But versus the islands in Jamaica, I've been to Jamaica, and the roads are bumpy. People may not drive, as safe per se, for example, but it may take longer to get to the destination because it's more so of a one way, or there's a lot of bumps in the road. So going back to relating it back to building the business and the soccer business and expanding TiDi Nation in the islands, in Africa, I see it being hard, but obviously you've done it, you have the experience. Can you share more in regards to how you're doing it? And
Yeah.
the picture I'm painting is not the right one, obviously, because I
No,
don't.
no, no. It's a great question. But, when you were saying the roads are bumpy versus kind of the roads are smooth,
Yeah,
but you build things based on the heart of the people. The roads are smooth in Canada, but the politics are rough.
right.
So that's why it's only 8 teams, and that's why they haven't had a pro league until now because they have to host World Cup. So it apparently smooth, but to build, that's a different story. So I'm building it just based on how you build, man, through natural relationships. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. The islands are a diaspora of Africa and Asia. I mean, Trinidad is a melting pot. You had, Africans, you had Indians, you had the Chinese, you had the Europeans. So for me, it's the relationship is what allows you to build, Kareem, not the topography of the land. And so once you have a plan, right? Like you look at One Soccer Nation and you coming into American market that some folks will say it's saturated. You're not looking at that. You're looking at your vision. So for me, it's needed and I'm going to give back. And how do I do it? See, a lot of people always say, Andy, it's going to be difficult because how you going to get a league? How's Jamaica going to play Trinidad? No, you create conferences within the islands because we know there's barrier to travel and money issue in the Caribbean and in Africa. We know that. So if you know what the challenges are, you don't just go and try to overcome that without understanding the game plan. So for me, just like I build a UPSL, each island becomes a conference, and then we're going to have a conference championship. We put it in one island, it boosts tourism, it boosts travel, it boosts everything. And we don't just do it 1 year, we do it 2 or 3 times a year so that each island gets fed in terms of the development and we connect. So they're small. Look, the whole Canada, even though the roads are smooth, the land mass, there's so much areas of Canada. Everybody's concentrated in Ontario and other provinces. And you look at Canada, there's nothing elsewhere. It's massive. It's so much bigger that it's going to be harder to cultivate and develop that massive land than this little Caribbean island. If we just understand, we are already connected. All we got to do is understand how to bring the right leadership in the room, get past the CONCACAF and FIFA political barriers to entry and build. And so for me, I don't look at, what can be done, Kareem. I just do what I can do and I let go and do the rest. So we're building, right? We're not looking at, how difficult it is or how easy it is, because those are the things that trip you up when you're doing anything.
Yeah, 100%. I'm the same way. Um, in regards to in the islands in Africa, do you have political relationships as well?
Yes, sir. Again, I mentioned my dad earlier, but look, we connected. Myself and my network are connected at the highest level everywhere, right? In Africa, we're dealing with leaders, we're dealing with presidents and prime ministers. In the Caribbean, being from the Caribbean and some of the partners I have, we're dealing with prime ministers. In the islands, it's prime ministers or the president. So yeah, we have the connection, but you see, sometimes if you go that political route or you go that FIFA route, you're not going to get things done because that takes on a different dynamic. TiDi Nation is not a political entity. We have no political uh, intent. We our intent is to develop and build people within the areas that they're in within TiDi Nation. So like when we're dealing with FC Tour, what I love about them, there's a lot of political unrest in Haiti. But that leadership there, shout out to Patrick and Alexandria and Jessica, and I just met another member, Cynthia. They're building. They're not letting the political thing stop them from doing what's right for the kids to have an opportunity in life. And that's the same approach, Kareem, that I'm taking. Anytime you go into this federation level and government level, you get stuck in the political monster that it is, the reality of what it is, and more importantly, folks that then can change the direction of where you want to go based on their investment or their influence over what you're doing. So I am I don't get into that. I'm building TiDi Nation under the radar. In terms of what we do it deliberately every day. And like I said, I let God do the rest. You see, to me, the strongest thing is when you believe, this tie-dye, think it, do it, hope, faith, is not just a saying, it's not just a slogan, it's not just a strong, good catchphrase for me. The things we've done with this brand, Nike didn't do in the first 5 or 6 years of their life. Okay. I can go on and on, but the truth is, over time, people will see what you believe manifest, because first you have to believe, then you see. The teacher in the world seeing as believing, it's backward. You don't see first, you believe first, then you see. Because for everybody that always tells me that and they say they believe in God, I go straight to them and I say, tell me when you've seen God. So if seeing as believing, then none of us believe in God then, because you haven't seen God. So believing, and then you see. And that's how I build. And that's how things are being manifested in TiDi Nation. And with that, Kareem, I don't get too caught up in what these folks are doing, because politicians have a nice game when they're running for office of what they're gonna do. And then when they get there, what are they doing? Ask that question.
Mm.
I don't want to be a part of that. You know what I mean? I really don't, because I want to stay true to what we say we're going to do. And when you look, our mantra is turning scholarships, turning dreams. TiDi Nation says we're turning dreams into scholarships, contracts, and careers. That's what we're about. Now, you mentioned my partner Kendall Reyes. Shout out to Paul Martin in Canada, who connected. Kendall connected me to Paul, who's a big part of TiDi Nation. Michael Awai in Trinidad, my nephew Akeem, Ronald. We have so many soldiers in TiDi Nation, right, across the board, that are doing great work. And the thing about what we have in common is this: we've done it sort of individually. A lot of us have coached, developed, and sent players to college. We were already doing that. So we don't go on a podium and tell the world, hey, this, because that's who we are. We've been doing that. So now, as we come together to be deliberate, scholarships is a check that box, we're doing it. Contracts, we have a sports management agency. Shout out to my partner Roger Bryan, who created the agency with me, and he's the brainchild behind our agency, right? He's my partner for over 20 years. We represented players everywhere. And then the careers part, Kareem, we're in a digital revolution. We're in a digital age. Actually, we're in the experience age now. So jobs as we know it is going to be different in the future. So what we do with TiDi Nation is building a platform to help people on multiple levels find their way forward. That's really what we're about, right? And how do you do that? You just do it systematically, right? You always hear the adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? You can't look at a whole elephant and say, wow, I'm going to eat this whole thing. It's too big. So TiDi Nation is going to grow organically, like this podcast today. And I just let it take on a life of its own with our leadership that we have. That's so impressive. I'm so impressed with the leaders that we have, because they're all doing things every day to make this a reality.
Amazing, amazing work that you guys are doing. Do you guys have existing pipelines from the islands to the U.S. to help facilitate, up and coming athletes in the islands to get a scholarship in the U.S.?
100%. Again, something that we've been doing. I've sent players to college. My nephew, if I can get him on here, he's one of the guys you should interview. I call him the young top coach in the world. I've been interacting with him since he was 14. Worked on him coming here on a scholarship, worked on other players that I've never even seen, just because some of my high school partners called me and said, yo, Andy, I've seen this kid. And so we've sent a lot of people, again, not in a formal way, to college on scholarship. Kendall does a lot of that on his own as well. And so we've kind of formalized that pipeline, Kareem. Charity begins at home, to create a deliberate path to TiDi Nation into the scholarship program, into the contracts. And so we've already represented players predominantly from the Caribbean. So it's just a natural, more of the same, but more of a deliberate pipeline now than an unstructured pipeline from the past. And we do have some coaches as well in the network. My goal is to eventually have all these coaches raise their hand and say, Andy, we're part of TiDi Nation as well. So the recruitment becomes, systematic. Once you're in the nation, we're looking within the nation to recruit the players that we need on the women's side, on the men's side, on the professional side. That's the ultimate goal here. But it's gonna be, it's gonna take a while. You mentioned where do you see it in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I kind of look at short term, medium, and long term. So in let's go 5 years right after World Cup, TiDi Nation is going to be a force to be reckoned with because when you look around, we're going to be delivering the quality player development, right? We're going to be giving players the opportunity to go to college. Those same players are going to turn around and participate in the nation. And so it's going to become a stronger and stronger entity just because of the lives that we're going to be impacting on so many levels. And in 5 years, I know the brand will be a household name. It's already getting there. And this whole movement, people will be aware that, if you're part of TiDi Nation, there's some quality players there, there's some amazing talent there, and it becomes sort of the go-to, especially for the Caribbean and African players.
Amazing. I'm excited to see this continue to grow. The last question that I had before we wrap up, and if you want to add anything else, just let me know. Funding. How are you guys bootstrapping, or are there, grants or different funds that you guys are receiving capital from? If you're able to share.
Yeah, for the most part, bootstrapping, right? Because again, Kareem, anytime you take money from someone, the folks that put the money in have control of the direction of your company, right? So that's business 101. You're doing it right now, raising funds. So we're doing a lot more bootstrapping than external investments, let's call it that. But I have, as a serial entrepreneur, TiDi Nation is one of my companies, right? I have multiple companies. And so I'm able to do different things to create the revenue stream needed to fund different things. And so it's funny. I was talking to someone recently who was doing commodities to fund their company, which is a revolutionary water treatment company. So we all have different ways that we have a saying in the island: you pay Peter or rob Peter to pay Paul. For me, bootstrapping, me funding, my wife funding, a lot of the things that we're doing in TiDi Nation came out of our own pocket, especially on the apparel side. But now with the team that I have and the business network, more opportunities are coming to get more investment in. And we just have to we are now determining the investment portfolio and who we want in as partners, because not just the money alignment, we want the visionary alignment. Let me just be real. We want the spiritual alignment so that we going in the same direction. When you put your money in, you're not putting your money to alter the direction of TiDi Nation.
I like that. I like that. I felt that one right there. The spiritual alignment right there. I like that one. Got it. So I really like that one. That one caught me off guard right there. So with saying that, um, got it. Okay. So that's it for. Oh, I did have one more question. And
Okay.
you mentioned managing a lot of companies. How do you manage all these different companies in regards to just like what you do, and then what do you delegate? Accounting, bookkeeping. Yeah,
Yeah. Great question
that's a
again.
personal question. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why meeting you and your partner Jay is going to be good, because he has a software and ERP system that can help me not have to hire the 20 people that I was planning to hire and continue to build these multiple companies. Technology is allowing you to do that. I work from home. I don't have to worry about going down. You see, there's trends going on that people miss. A lot of people are still living in the past. Oh, I got to have a corporate building and this office. And so they shoot themselves in the foot with an overhead and they can't sustain. I retired as a biology professor 7 years ago, never to go back to another job in my life. When I made that deliberate move into this life of being an entrepreneur, there were things that I knew I had to do in order to be sustainable. And so, how do I manage it? It's called, you asked about delegating. Not every company I'm the CEO of. I'm the CEO of some of my small companies. TiDi Nation is not a small company, but there are different departments with different leaders doing different things. There's a CEO in the Caribbean already. So wherever we expand, there's going to be a leader that's sort of aligned with the vision of TiDi Nation, and they can run with it. And I trust them as a business partner. With the other company, one next major company is Build Africa, and I have 5 other managing partners. So that's great because I don't have to do all the heavy lifting here. I have multiple partners with skill set to make these business deals, to generate the revenue, to sort of feed TiDi Nation and vice versa. So for me, Jay, Kareem, when you full time, if you look at some of these billionaires in the world, how many companies they have, right? This notion that you have to have one job and be one, that's you see, people who have the jobs don't have the money because they're being leveraged. So it's understanding how you can run your company and how you can make sure it's agile in this technology driven world. You don't have to build it like an old school, company with brick and mortar, and then you run into problems with payroll and employees and this and that. So a little bit of trade secret is keeping it agile, keeping it flexible, and keeping the overhead down is how I'm surviving multiple ventures that I do every day.
Mm, understood. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Well, Andy, before we go, I'd like for you to plug in TiDi Nation in regards to where the people could find you online and get connected to you.
Yeah. So our website is tidinations.com. Where you can see again just the overall vision, mission, purpose, and everything I talked about. We have a lot of socials as well at TiDi Nations with the Instagram and the Twitter, which is now X, and so forth. I have my social media folks sort of building out a game plan on the social media platform where we are developing some technology that we will own our own data, so to speak. So we're not in the traditional, the big four with YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Those are the platforms that those guys own. So TiDi Nation is building our own sort of socials. We will plug into existing socials, but for right now, the website and a few of the socials they can find us on. Once they tag at TiDi Sports or at TiDi Nations, they will find us on all the socials. And TiDi Nations with an S.com is our corporate website. TiDiCaribbean.com is our Caribbean website. And they'll be able to find us because we'll continue to kind of integrate a lot of things that we do in Kareem, which will make us much more visible very soon.
Amazing. Well, Andy, thank you so much for taking the time for being on the One Talk Nation podcast today.
You're welcome. Thank you for doing it while being under the weather and battling through it. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed it thoroughly, Kareem, and all the best to you with your One Soccer Nation, which is a hybrid of TiDi Nation, a family member of TiDi Nation. Looking forward to continuing to work with you in whatever capacity we can.
Likewise. Thank you, Andy.
All right.